Today we go head to head, Weller Antique 107 versus tried and true Maker's Mark Cask Strength. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. So today we're going to do a little bit of a head-to-head. This is something I've really wanted to do, actually more of. So I think with what we've got today, this is interesting because both of these mash bills are basically or thought to be identical. However, the Maker's Mark uses a red winter wheat and just a standard whatever the wheat is that is used in the Buffalo Trace, the Antique 107 mash bill. So this will be very interesting to see kind of how this all shakes out and these two kind of going head to head. And more importantly, one that's very difficult to find and one that you can just about find anywhere. So this will be really interesting to see whether or not we have to, stand in line or wait on Tuesdays for the truck to come in, whatever it may be. We'll see if this is something that you even have to waste much of your time doing. So the wife poured these. I don't know what either one of them are. I've got a little key over here to my left. And at the end, we'll ultimately get to see, is the Antique 107, worth chasing after trucks or standing in lines for. So, all right, let's go ahead. We'll start on your left. So let's see what we've got here today. Oh boy. So a really nice kind of cinnamon note right off the bat. Nice honey on that as well. Heavy caramels. Oh boy, that's really nice. Really nice caramel note on that. Nice baking spice, medium oak, not super heavy there. It's got that softness. So with these being wheaters, it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how these develop. And again, the Antique 107, like I said, so let's kind of talk a little bit about the mash bills on both of these real quick while we're kind of going through the nose. So the Antique 107 technically is undisclosed. We don't fully know exactly what that mash bill is for this, but basically we're looking at 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley, which is going to be, again, is going to be identical to the Makers, except they're using 16% red winter wheat. So we'll see if there's any slight differences on that once we get to them. So again, I don't know what either one of these are at this point. We'll find out. Yeah, this is nice. I mean, I do like the amount of heavy caramel that's on this. Slight fruity notes on here as well. All right, more importantly, let's see how this guy is going to taste. Cheers. So again, right away, you'd expect this with a wheated whiskey. There's a softness. However, there's still a nice little bit of heat on that. So both of them are going to be similar in proof. Obviously the Antique 107, this is slightly higher at like 110.8 proof, I believe. So there shouldn't be much of a difference there in terms of the proof and one maybe standing out more than the other than if one drinks hotter than the other. That could really be the only factor. So still get a little bit of a corn presence on this one. But again, nice caramels on the palate, similar to what I was getting on the nose. Maybe a little more dark fruit on this. This right here seems to have a pretty nice mouthfeel to it. There's this creaminess that's there on this. I like the cinnamon. I like the balance of this so far. I mean, the fruity aspect of this in the Distill America glass is kind of standing out really, really nicely. Really enjoy the profile of that so far. Again, I think the complexity of that is nice. Again, it's oily, mouth coating, nice caramels, some vanillas. There's still that softness that you get from a wheated bourbon. There's also a little bit of an oak profile to it. It's not dominating, it's not dry, but it's definitely there on this glass. So it'll be interesting to see ultimately what that ends up being. So we'll shift over now to the second glass, which is in my whiskey nose. Marty, good dude. So we'll see if we'll see how Marty's glass holds up in this blind today. So. All right, so this is much more of there's a little bit more of a kind of a perfume. There's this nice floral aspect on this. Again, nice honey note that's there. A little bit more of yeah, I guess just some kind of maybe a donut note or something like that. Definitely still heavy caramels on this one as well. Both very, I would say both right off the bat are very, very similar so far. You know, both relatively high in the malted barley. So a lot of times, you know, you're going to start to get a little bit more of that floral note that's there from the heavier or higher malted barley aspect. Maybe less cinnamon on this than there was the first one. It just doesn't seem like there's on the nose so far as much going on as there was in this glass. Still some of those like kind of fruitier notes that are there as well. But there's this softness, a little more pastry on this than there was on the first glass. But more importantly, let's actually, right before I pulled that away from my nose, I got a little bit more of a kind of a cherry note on that. So let me know in the comments below, who do you think at this point is either A, in the lead, or ultimately who do you think is going to end up being today's winner? All right, let's see how this guy is going to taste. Cheers. So what I'll say with this is, this seems to be in the whiskey nose glass. There seems to be actually a little bit more, I'll say complexity. There's a little bit more richness on this one. And again, age-wise, I think they're both fairly similar, maybe give or take a year. You know, I would imagine the Makers is in that 6-7 year range, and probably similar to the Antique 107, maybe a year or so older on that one. Again, similar mash bills, similar ages, so I figured these two going head to head would be a really nice kind of battle. A lot more vanilla on this. Again, nice rich caramel, maybe even a little bit of a butterscotch note on this glass than I was getting on this glass. I think so far of the two, you know, and looking at them, you know, they're similar in color. I think the whiskey nose glass is slightly darker. But in terms of overall profile, here's one thing I'll say before I even do a reveal of either one of them is they're both fairly similar. And with that already being the case, it's already an advantage for the Makers, considering that it's about $35 versus MSRP of around $55, maybe $60 on the Antique 107. And the huge issue with this is the availability. There's not many states where it's available. It's difficult to get. You know, even when you do find it, at times it could be upwards of $100, $150. On the secondary market, you know, this will creep into that 150-ish range. So already in terms of the advantage, I'll give that to the Maker's Mark Cask Strength, just because of availability and the fact that so far both of these are pretty darn close. So let me go back to the Distill America glass, and we'll see again what this has to offer again. Yeah, I'll say there's maybe a slight amount of little like ethanol, touch of that. Still very mouth coating, creamy, nice vanillas, nice caramels. There's that softness just with it being a wheated bourbon. But again, not as rich, I would say, kind of coming off of this glass here There's maybe just, it's just slightly under this one so far. So let's go back to this and we'll kind of get into the reveal here and see who ultimately ends up being the winner of today, the Antique 107 and the Maker's Cask Strength. Of the two, which one do I prefer? Whatever it is that's in this glass is definitely richer, a little more complex. I'll say a little more mouth coating, a little bit creamier, but it's not like completely blowing this out of the water. So I'm glad to see that, again, whatever one ends up winning, they're both so close that I think, you know, it by default picking up the Maker's Cask Strength because of its availability is already a winner in my book. But in today's battle, I guess of the two, the one I would prefer the most, if either or both were, you know, readily available and I could go right now to the store and pull both of these off the shelves, which one would I probably go to? Would definitely have to be the whiskey nose glass. So leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on who wins today's battle. In the whiskey nose glass is Antique 107 from Weller. I would say this, it was slightly richer, little more complex, and ultimately it's today's winner. I think what it had to offer versus the Makers, again, I think it stood out slightly ahead of what Makers had to offer. But again, the Makers wins out ultimately because of its availability. And with these two being this close, it's really kind of a no-brainer. I would definitely recommend you guys picking up the Maker's Cask Strength. It's one of those bourbons, again, tried and true. It's their kind of flagship, their benchmark. It's where it all starts for Makers. So, but in today's head-to-head, today's winner is the Antique 107. Again, richer, a little bit more complexity, maybe slightly better mouthfeel, maybe a little creamier. Both would be a recommendation. Again, you know, the Maker's Cask Strength, readily available for the most part. Just about anybody can go anywhere and usually find the Maker's Cask Strength. Antique 107, as most or all of us know, extremely difficult to find, highly allocated, can be very expensive. Cask Strength, today's winner is the Antique 107. Again, let me know your thoughts on both of these. If you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can through my Patreon page, which I'll have linked in the description below. It also allows you to become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, where we do a lot of great barrel picks for you guys as the Patreon community. So again, thank you so much for joining me. And remember, it's about the journey and not the destination.